It's Tuesday. It's our favorite day. It's our
Hey,
favorite day. It's
hey,
our favorite day. Yes, it's
hey,
our favorite day.
it's
It's
Tuesday.
Tuesday. It's Tuesday. It's Tuesday. It's Tuesday. It's our favorite day. Hey guys, welcome. It's the Connected Corner. I'm your girl, Tori Rose, the Connector. And I have this awesome and amazing pleasure of always introducing one of my favorite people. And you are.
I am Kiana B, and I'm introducing my little Queen Bee
Oh
mug
my God,
today.
I love it. You should bring it back for the next show. I have a hat and we could match, and that'll be amazing. Oh, I love it. So, guys, listen, we don't want to belabor your time. We're going to do some quick hellos and thank yous and all of that good stuff. But tonight, baby, we are still pulling back the veil. We want to talk about education. We want to talk about the unfair treatment of Black males in education and higher education. And we want to hear from this amazing doctor. We always get the doctors. I just realized that God has been so good to us. Guys, every week, if you are not tuning into the Connected Corner, you are missing out. Make sure that you are subscribed. Go to YouTube, type in the Connected Corner. Type it in. It's phonetically spelled. Then you want to hit the subscribe and you want to hit the bell. And the bell is going to notify you when we go live. Also, don't be stingy. I think I posted earlier, don't hate, collaborate. That means if you know someone who could use this information, go ahead and share it. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. So, Key, do you want to say thank you to our partners?
Yes, I want to give a big shout out and thank you to our media partner, Ready on Fire, operated, owned, founded, all of those good things by Mr. Diamond K. And so we are just excited to have him as a media partner, as a media mentor. We started on his platform, and so he's just been just a jewel for us in navigating through this. And so we'll be coming up on 3 years soon of our podcast. In
Honey, I don't know where
2022, it
the
will be
time
3
is
years.
going because we're just aging backwards,
I
Time is
know.
moving forward, but our ages are moving backwards. But anywho, thank
I
you,
can't believe
Diamond
it's been
K.
that long.
I know
It
it's
has been that
amazing.
long. And so it just keeps getting better and better. So make sure you guys are subscribing. And so we will be kind of wrapping up this series, as Tori talked about, that we'll be doing. And so if you have not seen the previous shows, make sure you go back and watch the replay. So this is part 6. So there are 5 other parts that you guys can get caught up on. And it's definitely information that we need. It's timely and you need it. And if you know a Black man, you are a Black man, you want to have a Black man. If you want an educated Black man, women always say, I want an educated Black man, then this is what we're talking about. And we're talking about those barriers to that. And so not only do the men need to be knowledgeable of this topic and subject, but women as well, right? So we can be those strong partners to our Black males in our community. So without further ado, we want to definitely introduce our next guest that we're going to have, and that is Dr. Julius Davis. And he is in the University of Maryland system. We joked earlier, but we're going to talk about all the different positions and programs and things that he does at Bowie State and throughout the University of Maryland system. And so we're excited to have him on. And so you guys just key it up, do it up, hand clap, drop the likes, drop the welcomes, all of that. Let's welcome Dr. Julius Davis to the Connected Corner.
Woohoo! Yes.
Thank you all
Put
for
your
having me.
virtual
I
hands
appreciate
together.
it.
Yes. So we're
Kiana.
We know you do a number of great things. Associate professor at mathematics education, founding director of the Center for Research and Mentoring of Black male students and teachers at Bowie State. And so that was one of the reasons we knew that you were a perfect person for this topic, for this subject. And so we thank, your brother and colleague, Dr. Goins, for introducing you to us and, having you here with us tonight just to continue this so needed conversation about this topic. And of course, you're someone that's versed in it, starting an entire center about it at Bowie State. So, to get started, tell our audience who doesn't know a little about yourself and, who you are.
Well, thank you all for having me. I'd also like to thank my colleagues who came before me, Derek Coley, Dr. Ramon Goins. Appreciate them paving the way for me to let me know I was amongst family. As you all heard from the intro, I'm an associate professor. I have a named professorship, the University System of Maryland associate professor. And I got that work, that title, doing work around Black male students and Black male teachers. And they help support the work that we started doing in the center over about 2 years ago. We actually culminated our work around Black male students and Black male teachers with the center. Other than that, I work primarily at the graduate level, but I do all and everything that has to do with Black male students and Black male teachers. And that's one of the joys that I get to have at being at Bowie State University, that I get to focus on Blackness every day, all day, and it makes me feel good.
And we thank you for that. And it's very needed. Just from even that brief introduction, I hear the value. Our title has been The Value of Higher Education. And I'm a words person, so I had to Google, what does value really mean? And according to Webster's, it's the regard, that something is held to deserve, whatever that means. But let's get another one. The importance, worth, or usefulness of something. Oh, I like that one. Let's look at another one. A person's principles or standards of behavior, one's judgment of what is important in life. And so we want to ask you a little bit about the things that helped you add value along your way. Can you tell us a little bit about your K through 12 education? Did you have Black male teachers? And if so, tell us about the value they added to your experience.
It's funny. I do work in this area, and I always have to count how many Black male teachers I've had throughout my career. I've had so many, I can't even really put a number to it throughout my experience. And so I attended schools, public schools in North Charleston, South Carolina, at the onset in elementary years. Around middle school or so, I came to Baltimore to live with my dad. And from that point on, my educational experiences have been primarily in Baltimore City. I'm a product of Baltimore City. Most of the schools that I attended don't exist anymore. I went to Pimlico Middle School, Northwestern High School. I grew up in Park Heights. And for me, a major reason why those schools don't exist is because of racism, gentrification. You look at Black communities in Baltimore. I don't got to tell you much if you know about Baltimore, the history and what Black people continue to experience in that. And so I think that a great deal of my education came from growing up in Park Heights and knowing that the majority of the people in my community didn't want to live like that. You can't tell me that. Nobody can convince me of that. And that the education that we received in public schools was not what we deserved. We deserved to know about our greatness as Black people throughout our K through 12 experience, which is what we know most of our children don't experience. And so those are like the beginnings for me. Baltimore City, it really raised me, seeing a lot of brilliant Black brothers that grew up with me that didn't make it. Those that looked out for me, paved the way for me. So that's been my educational experience, K through 12. Growing up in Baltimore, I really feel like I owe a debt to give my education and my work to Black people in the Black community.
Wow. Okay, West Side. So we, Tori and I, we're born and raised, we're Baltimore natives. And so we are very familiar, with the school system here, also educated in Baltimore City public schools. But, we went to the best Baltimore City public school, and actually the oldest all-girl public school in the nation. Let's drum roll, please. No.
Of course, she's talking about Western. What I legit was laughing about was, and this is probably so inappropriate, but I have a 7th grader. His father is in South Carolina, not too far from the area that you're from. So when you were being shipped to Baltimore, I'm like, I'm thinking about shipping him the other way. But anywho.
Well, that's literally how I got to Baltimore. I woke up one morning and my dad was sitting next to me on the bed and my mom was in the room packing up all my stuff. I wasn't doing well at the time, as you can see from that just short blurb. And my parents had the clear understanding that working together to get me out of where I was the best thing for my future. And I think had I not had that experience, I wouldn't be before you today.
Oh, thank you. I may bring him in here just so he can see himself in you in the future. Okay, amen. Bless you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that has a lot to do with, even looking at that, important having, guests, especially for this topic, with different backgrounds. And although in some way, shape, or form, all of our guests ended up in Baltimore, in Maryland, whether it was elementary school, middle school, or by way of college, but it shows that different background and the need for this conversation that we're having. Because right at that age, when you were shipped here, like Tori says, she's thinking of, I think it's very important. Like, that is a pivotal time, and males, particularly, even we're talking about Black males' lives, that the presence of Black men, strong Black men, is so important. And I'm saying from experience with 2 Black males, one who is now 26 and one is 20. And that was the same thing. So my youngest, his dad wasn't in a position to get him, so he went to go live with his godfather. Like, we were going to find somewhere for that time for you to have that one-on-one everyday experience like that, because it is important. So, and talking about that importance, why do you think there isn't an abundance of Black male educators, and making sure that our boys are seeing Black males in, the classroom, especially through that K through 12?
Well, I think my brother Ramon started talking about some of that, and particularly talking about like how many of our young Black men experience school. It is not the most welcoming place for them. We know that they have the highest discipline rates. They're the least likely to be selected for gifted and talented. They're the most likely to be expelled. Anything bad that goes on in schools, they're the most likely to get it. And so I think that that's a big reason. But I think it goes even back deeper than that. When you look at Brown, the Brown decision, where we lost scores of Black teachers, we lost a lot of Black men in that space as well. And I don't think that we've ever recouped from the Brown decision, where we were trying to integrate to make education better for Black children. We ended up in many ways giving them a disservice by disconnecting them from Black teachers who were connected to the nucleus in the Black community, who could tie education to their own lived realities and experiences. And so I think that that's another element. Like, we haven't really gotten over that historical context of losing all those Black teachers. I think that for the most part, Black children are not treated the best in public schools. I mean, everything that we do that's us, there's a policy or practice being made to stop us from being ourselves. And so when you don't get an opportunity to see your greatness, which is one of the things that I think is absolutely essential in working with Black children, that you tell them how great they are, that you let them know that their history and their culture is so important. And I think Black teachers are a vehicle to bring that to them. Every opportunity I get to talk to Black children, that's what I tell them. They're great. You come from greatness, but don't think your greatness started here in the US. You have to contextualize that greatness to Africa. Don't contextualize our experience starting in slavery, because you miss a real rich greatness of our ancestors. And so I say, even in spite of that, our ancestors have created great things in this country, and that you are them and they are you. And so you must be great and show that. So that's me. I think that for us to get why we don't have as many is, I don't really think that folks really want Black male teachers. I think it's like, we use those catchphrases, diversity, inclusion, all that good stuff. But when I talk to a lot of school districts who try to meet with me about, doing work around Black male teachers, they don't come to the table with any thought, any finances. It's just lip service. I don't think that they have a real true commitment to wanting more Black teachers. And I think that's another reason why we don't have them. I think the way that we have the push to support and keep Black teachers going is there's some committed folks in school systems and out of school systems who are saying, if they're not going to do it, we're going to do it.
My goodness. Whew, I'm getting hot. So If you're just tuning in, make sure you are following us at the Connected Corner on YouTube and on Facebook. We are here with an amazing guest, Dr. Julius Davis. He is talking, just drop some knowledge. If you guys don't know what Brown is, he is not talking about the football team. He is referencing the Brown versus Board of Education decision from the 1950s. We all understand that being Black in America is politicized. And even when it looks like the Supreme Court is doing something good to help us, this was the decision that the Supreme Court made to overrule the separate but equal principle that was set forth in the Plessy case. So now here we go. We have the Supreme Court saying, okay, segregation is unconstitutional, but they're not going to give us funding, and they're not going to give our teachers, fair and adequate pay, and all of these other things that have not still happened, because you can look across the country and see the disparities. Oh, you got my history bone. Literally, I have chill bumps. Anyway, Dr. J here is dropping knowledge. And so, guys, we want to hear from you. Put your comments there. Let us know what you think about it. Whew, okay. So we know, because we've read up on you, we were in your bushes, about your background, but can you share a little more about what college did you attend and why? What was your decision behind it?
Well, I went to the Lincoln University in Pennsylvania. I love my alma mater. When I went there for a campus visit with my aunt, it was like a spiritual thing that let me know that that was where I was supposed to be, to grow into the man that you see before me. I don't know that I would be the man before you if I didn't go to Lincoln University. I had so many great professors and so many great experiences that have prepared me for what I'm doing right now. When I left there, I felt like there was nothing that you could put in front of me that I couldn't do. And so I haven't looked back ever since. I've had great mentors like the legendary Dr. Abdul-Alim Shabazz in mathematics, who's responsible for the majority of the Black people with a PhD in mathematics or mathematics education. Either he has taught or his students have taught them. And so I had the experience of learning under him. I had another really great professor named Dr. Linnell Dade, who pushed me and who actually said to me, "I'm going to turn you into a man." Letting me think of myself, I was already thinking that I was there, but she really taught me a whole lot. And really there, as I was kind of alluding to in my K through 12, my dad always said, know your history, know your history, know your history. I didn't really know what that meant. I just was on this search for trying to figure out what that looked like. And when I got to Lincoln, I found out really what that looked like by, taking different professors who challenged me and who made sure that we understood Black history and culture. So I think that being at Lincoln, really helped me to develop a Pan-Africanist perspective of how I see the world, how I approach the world, how I approach the work. And so without that, I don't know where I would be. My grounding and my uncompromising nature of focusing on Black people and Black issues comes from seeing professors who did the same thing. So it let me know that, yeah, you're gonna have battles, you're gonna have fights, but you got to stay the course and keep the fight going. That's your responsibility.
That is amazing and it's awesome. And I know, Tori and I both going to HBCUs. I think that it is very, very important. We also had the honor of supporting a nonprofit here in Baltimore. It's KDW Cares, and they actually just instituted a scholarship last night for their organization, and it's the Urban Educator Scholarship. And it's in honor of our cousin who passed away last year from complications from COVID. And so he was just phenomenal in mentoring and educating young people. And so, you have to, and so in order to get the scholarship, and, it'll be announced, and, I might be spilling the beans a little bit, but it's been posted on social media, so everybody know now. Mm-hmm. But one of the criteria is that the high school student has to be entering the HBCU. to get the scholarship. And so because we knew, you know, his friends who, you know, are on the board of this nonprofit and founder of the nonprofit, and, you know, somehow family was able to be there to understand like that was important to him. And so it is just phenomenal of even having something that's a step, you know, towards that right direction, and hoping other organizations will follow suit with that, and putting that money back into our HBCUs and rewarding our students for attending HBCUs is important. And, you know, so, you know, thank you for answering in that way and talking about that. In addition to, you know, you're talking about your K through 12, having experience in North Carolina, as well as Baltimore, attending an HBCU. We know that education has been racialized, and you've kind of, you know, hinted to that in some of your answers already. So did you find it easy? We know you say you know, had some difficulties in the beginning of, you know, having to go with your dad. So was it easy being a Black male student or a Black student? Was that some of, you know, how some of the troubles came about? And, you know, how did that change throughout your educational journey?
Well, I think one thing that sticks out to me I think two things that stick out to me as a defining moment. One is I can remember a distinctive moment in school where I'm like, you can't tell me that Black people ain't did nothing in these books. Why every book that we read, they ain't got nothing to do with Black people in there? That was a first disconnect from school for me. Like, it was just something in my spirit. And I think it's our ancestors that said, this ain't right. You can't tell me that they ain't did nothing great. And so I think from that moment on, I just started fading away from school, because really where I grew up in South Carolina, many people there that, you know, in my family or in my community, I didn't really know much people with a college degree or education. Like, what is that? And what do you do with that? And I really didn't see that you could do anything with a college education until I came to live with my dad and I saw my aunts. So for me, right, you know, people like to talk about Black men working for Black boys and Black men, but Black women, you cannot talk about Black boys and Black men without talking about the importance of Black women. And my aunt is one of those. Well, I have several aunts, but one in particular have been very key. Really, they all have been, and really showing me like how you can have a better life with an education. And then also too, just giving back to me. I wasn't even their son, but they took me under their wing like I was their son. Especially considering, like I said to you, I came to live with my dad. So I've been away from my mom since I was like in 6th grade. And I didn't realize until I was much older how much that impacted me. Like, you need your mother's love. Growing up as a young man or a young woman, you need that. You need your father's love. You need them both. And so those two moments like were very significant to me. Like, I think that we need to know that we have people in our corner to help us to get through. And I was fortunate enough to have an extended family that helped me to see that I can have a better life through education.
Wonderful. Thank you. I did like this when you were saying about the Black mother, because I felt guilty. I was like, boy, I started packing on the side over here. No, I'm joking. While I do value and understand the importance of my son going with his dad, it really is up to him, because we both said to him, if you can't make it, you got to go. And he said, no, this is where I'd rather stay. And if this is where you rather stay, these are the things you have to do. And he's been hitting milestone after milestone after milestone. So I have to believe either he loves me or he just doesn't want me to date. Either way. Either way. Listen, guys, here at the Connected Corner, we strive to give our audience news and resources the average person like us can use. And so if you're watching this series, if you've tuned in and tapped in, you may be saying, well, how can I use it? You can do something as simple as take $10 and take it to a local school. Like, buy some supplies, see a young boy outside and say, hey, let me give you some pencils and pens. Literally, you can share this. You could do so many things. But the pencil and pen idea came from a friend of mine. We went to middle school together, and his name is Antonio. He has passed away since school. But he had failed because he never had a pen or a pencil and paper. And so he had lost so many participation points that his grades were suffering from him not being prepared. No teacher, no administrator, nobody ever thought, like, can we just get some extra supplies or resources? Like, we should not be failing this kid because he's not prepared. There has to be another issue. And there was a lot of other social, emotional, and economic issues in the background. And so the year that he and I met was his second year in seventh grade. It was my first year in seventh grade. And he would go and bring packs of pencils to school because he refused to let anybody else fail for not being prepared. So a seventh grader had the idea of a policy change, of a situational change that needed to happen. And he didn't want what had happened to him to happen to any of the other students. And he became my best friend because I just like people like that. Like, that's dope, you know? Anywho, since we talk about policy changes, I think sometimes the average person doesn't feel that they're empowered or emboldened to really make those changes. And we know it can be something so small. And so we want to hear from you. What policy changes do you think are needed to support Black males in college and specifically in HBCUs?
I think that's a little tricky question for me. I just recently finished working with the Maryland Board of Education. We recently had a task force on achieving educational equity and excellence for Black boys. And my skepticism about policy led me to say initially, like, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to waste my time to create this fancy report that sits on people's desk and they do nothing about it. When I say that, I think that there've already been a lot of things advanced in policy spaces and documents all throughout because I've read them, but people don't do them. So like when you start asking me about like policy, I'm like, do these folks really want Black boys and Black men to be successful? We've already seen a bunch of recommendations out there that can do that, but it's not being implemented. And so like I have skepticism about policy and legislative spaces when it comes to the Black community. I use critical race theory. I study critical race theory. I have a book on critical race theory in math ed. And one of the things that critical race theory helps me to think about, like, policies generally don't, or legislation, laws, whatever you want to call it, don't generally move towards the Black community to benefit them unless it benefits white folks first. And so when I think about policies, right, I don't think that laws and all that were really designed to advance us. If you look at us historically, laws have been the means of destroying Black communities, put up a new highway, whatever the new thing is that they want. Laws have been the basis for destroying whatever improvements that we make as Black people. So I know that folks spend a lot of time thinking about like what policies and things like I'm kind of skeptical about that. I kind of take on an approach and thinking about this through a lens of Garvey, that we got to build our own institutions for our community. And if we don't do that, nobody else is going to do that. But we also got to be prepared that just like our history shows, folks are going to come and try to tear it down. And so like, I think for me, I think sometimes when people see policies, and excuse me if I say this to offend anybody, when people see voting, they kind of absolve themselves for any action that they need to take themselves. Like, to me, for us to improve things that we think are important in the Black community, we all got to roll up our sleeves and do something. Whatever you think is important, that's what you got to be working on. And I don't think we do enough of that. I think we do a lot of talking about it, and instead of like putting what our ancestors did, they did what they said. You know, it wasn't just a whole bunch of talk. And maybe one could say that it was the context in which they were in. They had a lot of pressure and racial times, and that time they don't have what we have in terms of the freedoms. But at the end of the day, you can't take away the fact that they put in work, and that's what we have to do too.
Well, we dropped the proverbial mics over here. We just got pins, but that's the mic. But honestly appreciate your transparency and honesty in that, because, as people who recently, well, more recently for myself in the last couple of years, learning more and understanding policy and, voting and being, I was going to say pushed into politics, but I won't say pushed.
You can speak your truth, sis. I pushed, pulled, begged you. That's fine.
But some people would think it was her push, but I actually worked on some campaigns prior to Tory, running for office, but more so, treasurer in that background, but being kind of the chair, the campaign manager, whatever titles, whatever wasn't in place for Tory's campaign, it definitely thrust me a little more into just being more knowledgeable and understanding policy and things of that nature. That was outside of like the things that I thought were important, which was, business and educate. That was it. If it wasn't revolved around business, I was like, oh, okay, whatever. But learning how everything really kind of goes together. And so, thank you for being honest about that answer, because I think a lot of people feel that way. And so, hey, audience, if you feel the same way that Dr. Joyce, I'm going to say Dr. J, but he said Julius is fine, but we want to go ahead. You work hard for that, so you deserve the title.
So the title don't mean much for me. I take a Dr. Ben approach. It separates us from our people, but I use it in my school, my professional context. Yeah. But if you see me out in the community, I prefer other terms than doctor. And you won't actually ever hear me really introduce myself like that in the community, because I don't want to separate myself from my brothers and sisters. And I don't think that makes me any better. I worked for it, but a lot of people work for me to be there. So, I hear you, but I want my brothers and sisters to see that we all in this together.
Yeah. And that's important. It really is. And we know some people like the title. I laugh because I taught high school. And so for those people who, at that level of education, who go and be like, I'm going to get my doctorate degree, my EDD and those type of things. And then they come in and they write Dr. So-and-so on the board. And the kids are like, he a doctor? Like, so why are you here if you're a doctor? And so without actually educating them on what that is, they pump to put the title up, but then not really communicating. And like you said, being connected to the students, that they don't even understand what that means if you don't explain to them. They're confused about why you're in here teaching English, math, history, or any subject to them if you're a doctor. And so I appreciate that, because I think some people need to hear that and understand that. And so as far as policy, and we understand like policy, because the things are not being done, these policies are written, and definitely going off of we have to build and do the things within our community for our community. What are some things that you believe the African-American community should be doing or instilling in their children before college? Because we do have to take that ownership to do that.
MK Asante at Morgan State has this poem called Two Sets of Notes. One to pass the test, and the rest, right? I think that for Black people, especially with our children in public schools, we have to prepare them with two sets of notes. One is to get through this system that we know ain't meant for us to do well and to succeed and to prosper. And I think the other is where they understand their own history and culture in a very intimate way, where they understand that their education should be committed to their community. And I think that starts by ensuring that our children get a vast knowledge of their greatness through our history and our culture, cultural events, things of that nature. I think that's very essential. I think that we know that our children are not served very well in schools. And so we have to be very active in those spaces. We have to advocate for them. I think I find often that, the teacher's word, and I'm not saying this in a disrespectful way to teachers and adults, but the teacher's word is often accepted without question. And I say that to say that I've seen some teachers do some very horrible things to our children. And so we can't not listen to their voices when we hear that things are going wrong at their schools we need to be there and be involved. I think that we need to ensure that they are around a supportive network of folks that are building them up. And that can come from many ways. Family, people out in the community, people out in your professional network. We need to be exposing and sharing with our young people a network of folks who are committed to their success. In our tradition, culturally, it's the community's responsibility for the children. It shouldn't just be the parents' responsibility for the children. And I think that we got to get back to our very own cultural roots where we take responsibility for our children. I think that we kind of fractured given where we all are dispersed geographically. But I think that at the end of the day, we all got a responsibility for Black children in the Black community. I think the thing for me is that people often say things like, Black Wall Street and building up Black communities, like we never did that before. We done that, and some more. But the thing, like I've said, is that white folk keep tearing down everything that we built for ourselves. Most of our leaders have been assassinated, fighting for us. And so I think that we just really have to commit our children to using their education for the advancement of their people. Dr. Carter G. Woodson said that you can have folks who get a college degree and do nothing worthwhile to benefit your community. And so that's not the kind of people that we want to create. We want to create young people who know unequivocally that they have to have that commitment to the Black community. And I'll stop there.
Ooh, I am getting choked up for several reasons. And I think I've shared throughout this series that I went to Bowie. I became a history and government major, basically to slap the white faces of professors and teachers and counselors who said Black women in politics and Black women in history was not going to be a thing. And it was not for me. I had a counselor tell me that this was not an urban enough field for me. And so initially I went into the field because I was petty and I wanted to prove not only was I intelligent and I was a critical thinker, but I could hold my own with the best of them. Then you came and you started talking about critical race theory, and the little bit of hair I have on the back of my neck stood up. I am currently working on my master's in education. I've been prompted by at least one professor, to continue through. When I feel like the only title I want is the connector, but I recognize having certain letters with your name, while it can put a barrier between us and the people we serve, it definitely is a key to open the door to get us to the tables where the resources are. And so I've seen it work in both ways. But before I go down that path, I want to go back to critical race theory. I want to really, first of all, let's talk about it, because people think it's the boogeyman of topics of conversation. And everybody is talking about critical race theory. You Google it, you probably find 5,000 quadrillion articles as if it's a new thought or new concept. Gary, was it Peeler or Peller, I think, had the book, and I was trying to see if I could look for the name through my phone, but I can't. I know it's Affirmative Action in Legal Academia or something like that. And it's a book about critical race theory. Help us, the average person, know a little bit more about it. What is critical race theory? Why is it such a hot topic? Why is it the boogeyman of conversations? And why do white Americans not want it taught?
Wow. That's a big one, right?
We'll do it in 5 minutes.
So I think, most people may know at this point in time, critical race theory birthed out of the legal scholarship, legal literature. Derek Bell is one of the fathers of critical race theory. And it's a framework that helps us look at issues of race and racism. It emerged in the law because issues of race and racism weren't being addressed adequately. And so folks who subscribe to critical race theory challenge those paradigms for not addressing race and racism adequately. And so they operate from the premise that racism is permanent, a permanent fixture in US society, and that it just continues to renew itself and look differently over time. And that race is an important way of understanding how it goes. So if we translate that issue to education. It emerged in education the same way too, because race and racism weren't being addressed adequately, especially when you start looking at the Black community and other groups that have been marginalized. And so it emerged in education that way as well. What we see going on in society right now with all of these white mobs of parents and families going to school board meetings to contest critical race theory when they have no absolute evidence that critical race theory is being taught in their schools, to me, is a part of protecting the whitewashing of the curriculum. So now anything that sounds like race, racism, talking about Black history, correcting their history, showing where they have done anything wrong historically is now critical race theory. Most of the folks who are talking about critical race theory have never read anything about it, haven't really fully studied it, and now they become an expert in critical race theory overnight because it's a hot topic. But critical race theory is most known for its theoretical framework in graduate work, research, and it's grown over time to include methodology, pedagogy. It depends on who you talk to about critical race theory as to the perspective that they're going to give you about it. But it covers a lot of ground. But most of what you hear going on in the public ain't critical race theory. It's white folks scared that they don't really want real issues talked about in school systems.
If you haven't subscribed to our station, make sure that you go to the YouTube, type in The Connected Corner. Make sure you hit subscribe. Also find us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Listen, share this, have a conversation. You don't know anything about it? That's fine. Dr. J has given you a lot to think about. Ask little boys in your neighborhood and your family, have they heard of this? Is race real? Is it just a social construct? Let's have these conversations. Whew. I'm speechless. Kiana.
Look, I was like sitting here. I was like, oh, we do have a show. I felt like I was taking notes. I forgot. I'm just listening. I forgot this was a whole podcast, and we actually need to come back and say something. Right. I'm like, okay, but honestly, thank you for the value that you're adding to this topic, to this subject, to our series. We knew that it was something that needed to be discussed. As an education advocate and enthusiast myself, having an opportunity to teach in the K through 12 arena, middle school students as well as high school students, it is just very important to me. And I was that teacher that at times, like, I'm glad that I have the ability to kind of go in and out sometimes, right? And so I've been in education. I was a career changer when I did it. And then I was like, okay, I need a break because the bureaucracy, people always, when I say, well, I used to teach, they're like, oh, the students, had nothing to do with my students. Love my students. I still mentor several of them. I still follow them. I still make sure they're good. I still have connections with every school that I've taught at. Had nothing to do with my students. It had everything to do with the adults, the bureaucracy, and exactly what we're talking about of people not wanting to address the issues. When you hear your white counterparts say certain things that you have to walk away, you have to walk out, so many other things because you hear it and it's being said. Or the talk around because you don't want to say because they're Black students or, different things of that nature. I've heard things say, well, especially for schools that were predominantly white that are now getting Black and brown students, in them, conversations like, where all the other institutions are closed or the other institution, what? Like almost as if they had to come to our schools. They would prefer them to be in a jail or juvenile detention center or somewhere else other than at their school because they're changing the dynamic of their schools. Teachers saying, well, I'm here at this predominantly Black school, but if I was on the other side of Baltimore County, I would have to do such and such and basically work harder. Mm-hmm. Like these are the things. So don't tell me it does not exist. Yeah. You have people in the schools, like you said earlier, that the teacher's word is bond. And I used to say, well, God, why having this opportunity to teach? Because then I taught when my children were like early elementary, right? So I started teaching when they were in preschool and elementary. So by the time they got to middle and high school, you didn't get to teach my child. You didn't get to pick my child's schedule or their teachers. I picked it. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just, I went in as a parent. Many times I wouldn't even start my conversation with teachers to tell them that I was a Baltimore County school teacher. I wanted to hear what you had to say. I had a teacher when my son was going to one school to tell me maybe I should take him out of GT, chemistry or biology and put him in standard, because A or B in standard is better than him getting a C or B in GT. I just let her talk. Like, oh, okay, really? Oh, okay, no worries. Then I hit her with the email and said, as a parent and specifically as your colleague at this Baltimore County school, I'm disturbed by you having that discussion with me as a parent. Mm-hmm. And no, it doesn't make more sense because the C or B in the gifted and talented carries more quality points than a B or A in the standard. Thank you very much.
That's historical. You remember Malcolm X's teacher told him he couldn't be a lawyer. This historical context for Black children. We know this. We know that folks don't have high expectations for our children.
They don't. And we have to, I had someone say to me years ago when I was pregnant with my son, and it was literally a stranger. I mean, it's a family friend, but not close enough to give me this type of intimate advice. She said, I don't care if you get hooked on drugs. I don't care if you start drinking. I don't care if you smoke your life away. You show up for him. She said, because showing up for him will allow him to learn how to show up for his children and show up for children around him. And it was such a weird, being from Baltimore is a different dynamic, right? If I were from, I don't know, Columbia, maybe she would have never said if you get high, if you fall to the substance abuse. But statistically, I was 24, 25 when I had him. Statistically, for my family, there was a possibility that before he turned 18, I would be addicted to a substance. She wanted me to understand that I still had a responsibility to show up and advocate for him. And I took that with me. At the time I was working for the federal government, I also career changed into education, as Kiana is saying. And I remember when I went to my first school, I was calling Kiana like, oh, I don't like my coworkers. They real racist, and you start to have these conversations. I was the only Black person in my department outside of the department chair who obviously had on rose-colored glasses. And so as a history teacher, when I hear my counterparts, my colleagues saying, you're going to do a project this weekend and you're going to pretend to be a slave and you're going to come from the slave's perspective and you're going to tell me if slavery was a choice. No, we're not doing that. No, we're not. And so for anyone who's listening, you don't have to be an educator. You don't have to be educated. The spirit that dwells on the inside of you know what's wrong. What you have to be is an advocate. Like when it feels wrong, it's wrong. And I'm just admonishing everyone to step up and stand up for your kids. And like this family friend said to me, I don't care if you high, out your mind, you show up for your children, because too frequently the schools are expecting you not to be there. We have all of these statistics about the disciplinary gaps and all of these things and racial disparities in school and discipline and academic achievement. And we could talk intelligently. But if you don't take anything from this podcast, take that your boys especially need you to show up for them. There is still a such thing as the, school to prison pipeline. They are still looking at our children, calling our kids troubled students. Our kids are not troubled. A lot of times they are marginalized and they are demonized and they are traumatized much more than they're troubled. And so anyway, I'm gonna get off my soapbox, but I value this conversation. There's been so much meat from it. And I think that hopefully our viewers, our listeners are hearing things that are going to say, hey, you know what? I may not believe in policy or think that the policy is actually going to be implemented, but I know I have the ability to go mentor someone. I can be the change. I've lost my faith a lot of times. People want to have political conversations with me and I hit them with because unless you're going to pick up a hammer and pick up a set of nails and go to work, you really can't talk to me. I'm not that person. So we admonish people to not only have the conversation, but to be about the action. So thank you for that. Just, you got me hot. Like I'm bothered, and I have so much I want to say, but I realize we're coming to the end of our hour together. Well, child,
Can I just add one thing quickly about
you can say
parents?
2 things quickly. Come on.
I think there's a misnomer too that even when Black parents are involved, that they're welcomed in school environments, and a lot of times, even involved Black parents aren't welcomed in school environments. So I feel like when people start talking about like Black parents ain't involved, they don't care, it's also a part of that phraseology to kind of help them justify their mistreatment of Black students and Black children. Because when parents show that they care, they don't welcome them in the environment. They don't show them the respect that they do. And they treat them in many ways in a very disrespectful manner. So I think that even though you're involved, that doesn't mean that the folks want you there. And I still think that further shows that how much we need to really be advocating for our children in those spaces.
Very true. What they told you, I got locked up at the school fighting for her son. They told
you.
What you Google me? Oh, okay. I just want her son, by the way, is my godson. So Kiana and I are cousins. The world knows that, whatever. But that specific son, we were tag team shifting. Monday, you got Monday. I'm up there Tuesday. I'm up, and we have an aunt who was an IEP department chair. Wednesday, you don't have to like me. You don't have to accept me. But until you have me forcibly removed, I'm going to be in here. And I think that is the idea our grandparents had. You know, heck or high water, they were going to fight. Their voices were going to be heard. And I like that you said that, because even then with my son, they might not like me, but they're going to respect me. And they're not going to marginalize my son.
They're going to think twice before they do mistreatment towards him, because they know some people are going to come and show up.
Thrice. They're going to think thrice when it comes to this one. So listen, we're coming down to the end of our hour. I'm going to remind you guys again to subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's been a dynamic conversation. We know that we can't give you the whole elephant. So we give you bites of the elephant that you can digest and you can really mull on. This is a conversation that needs a lot more time and years. But if you don't take anything from it, take 2 things. Subscribe to our channel. B, the A, number 1. And B, you should go to work. Pick up a nail and a hammer and go to work and do what you can do in your sphere of influence.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And you know, this has been juicy, as, you know, Tori say, and we hope that our audience sees the value in it as much as, you know, we see the value in it, because we're bringing it, you know, to the communities, to the airways, to social media, because we know that this is something that is on everybody's mind. And so, you know, it was funny because some people say, oh, controversial. And people say, oh, it's not so controversial. But when you're, you know, like we're saying, talking about the critical race theory and talking about it does make some people uncomfortable. Those who have rose-colored glasses on, those who don't see, who don't believe it, whether they're Black, white, brown, you know, whatever the case, sometimes it even makes, you know, Black people feel uncomfortable to talk about these things, right, and have to advocate. And so we thank you again for being here. And you guys, make sure you subscribe, put your comments in. We want to hear from you as well. And so as we're going through, continue to put your comments, let us know how you've enjoyed the series, you know, let Julius know how much you have enjoyed him as a guest on the Connected Corner. And, you know, we'll later talk about how to get connected with him, and we'll put that information in as well. And we also want to make sure you give us information about, you know, your book and things of that nature. But before we get to that and end, we have a segment in the show, and don't get nervous. Everybody was like, "Ooh, I didn't know about this part." But it's key questions, and it's kind of rapid fire. It's 3 questions. Look, well, you are intelligent. You are smart.
You is smart. You is beautiful.
Yeah, it is 9. It is 9 o'clock.
No, you're gonna be good. You're gonna be good. It's 2 minutes. Look, I got a little timer here for you and everything. And so it's 3 questions, very easy questions, you know. You're gonna get it. You'll do fine.
Okay.
And so the object is to answer all three before the timer goes out.
All right.
Okay.
Cool.
So I'll start the timer after I read the first question. For the audience, you can answer along with Julius. We'll also drop the questions in the comments so you can answer as well. All right. And so the first one is, what is one piece of advice you would give your 20-year-old self? So one piece of advice you would give your 20-year-old self. And
To grind hard. Your early years are important years for you to get in the work that you need to get in. When you get older, it gets much harder. Second question.
I agree. Okay. All right. How would you do your look? I can't even read the question.
You messing up my time.
How do you know you're walking in your purpose? How do you know you're walking in your purpose?
Oh, that's a good one. I would say though, as a person who believes in African people connected to our roots, spiritually, it feels right. Your whole spirit lets you know that this is right. Like when I wake up in the morning, when I do everything, like it feels right to know that I'm focused on Black people issues, even when it's hard.
That is so good. Tori, don't cry. All right, number 3. What is one thing you want people to take away from this episode?
Oh, wow. To subscribe. And to, as we said here, roll up your sleeves and put in some work.
Wow. I think you did the best out of everybody. Look at that. You still got like a whole minute.
He watched Dr. Ramon going.
I didn't see that part.
This was coming. Well, listen, you have been an absolute pleasure. And Kiana knows whenever people start talking about the ancestors, the spirit, I'd be boo-hooing because it's just, it gives me the prickly. So tell us, where can
Which even goes to show you why our children need it.
Most certainly. They need all of us. They need us to be in our rightful places. Thank you for that. Can you tell us where we can find you and how we can purchase your book?
So I have 2 books. One book is Critical Race Theory and Math Education. You can find that, I think, at most major platforms. I also have another book called Black Males Matter. Don't get me to chop up the rest of the title, but basically it's about their academic and social development. You can get that at most major outlets as well. You can always find me at Bowie State University. They're going to roll me out in my wheelchair when I leave there. But when I leave there, you're going to see a legacy focused on Black people issues, particularly focused with an issue on Black male students and teachers. So I'm at Bowie State University. You can hit me by email. Our Twitter account for the center is right there, but you can also find us on all platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, Bowie State University website. We ain't hard to be found. If there's work being done, we're probably doing it. So that's where you'll find us, where the work is.
Awesome.
Thank you, Dr. Julius.
I appreciate that, brother. It means a lot coming from you. You know, I just got the award of the year.
Well, thank you. And you guys can find me on Instagram at Tori Rose the Connector. I am back on social media. And I'm on Facebook as Tori Rose. Anything positive is me. Anything that's not positive, report it. Ain't me. Kiana, where can we find you?
You took it where I was going to say, she's back.
I'm back.
You can find me on all social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook. What's the other ones? Twitter and LinkedIn as Kiana B. Jones. And so you can connect with me there. You can connect with the Connected Corner, #GetConnected, at the Connected Corner on Facebook and Instagram. And as we have said all night, YouTube, go subscribe to our channel, type in the Connected Corner, hit subscribe and hit the bell so you can get notified because we'll be back again with new shows, new content, all of these great things and some new series for you guys. And so we want to continue to bring you news and resources that you can
actually use, guys. So stay connected. We are so thankful. Meet us here, like Kiana said, Tuesdays, 8 p.m. And also check us out on our previous shows. You can also go to Radio on Fire and see some of our earlier shows. Make sure you get connected and send us an email if you want to talk about a specific topic. Our email is bcg.manage@gmail.com. If you're interested in being a guest on our show, email us at bcg.manage gmail.com. So we want to hear from you guys. It's been real. It's a Tuesday, our favorite day. Thank you, Dr. Julius Davis. You have been an amazing guest. There's just so many nuggets, and we pray that we can have you back sometime in the future. And let us know if you need volunteers, or we can reach out to any of the boys in our network and send them whatever you need. You are family. So please let us know how we can serve you as you serve others.
I appreciate that.
Thank you so much. Peace, y'all. See y'all next Tuesday.
God bless.